Well, we're starting our Advent series this morning, and we're calling it Messengers. And I don't know if you've noticed this, if you've read through the stories of Advent, the stories of Jesus' birth, there's a lot of angels hanging out in these stories. In fact, a lot of the Christmas carols that we sing about angels. And so we're going to take a look at these angelic encounters that happen, that are really strategic encounters that happen in the story of Jesus' birth, and why these angels came and what message they brought with them. It's sort of like in the Bible, anytime something really big happens, God releases his angels to prepare the way and set the stage, and that is certainly what happens at Jesus' birth. And so all throughout the story of his birth, we see angels making special visitations. And I want to break down for you a couple things. I think this begs the question for us. Number one, what's the purpose of angels? Like, how are we to understand who angels are and what they do? They kind of just show up on the scene as if we know what they are. So we're going to break down a little bit of that. And then the second question is, what are these special visitations and what's happening here? What's the message that's supposed to be communicated here? So let's start with that first question this morning. What's the purpose of angels? I don't know if anyone has taught you kind of the basics of angels in the Bible. We're not going to spend long on it, but I want us to make sure we have a biblical understanding of angels. There's a lot of weird stuff out there about angels. So let's make sure we have a biblical understanding of who angels are and what they're doing. Number one, the word angel means messenger, which tells us kind of what their role is in many ways. Number two, angels are created beings that operate mostly in the spirit realm. So they were created when the heavens and the earth were created, when humans were created, angels were created as well. They're not eternal beings like God. Only God is eternal. They are created, meaning there was a time that they were created and brought kind of into God's creation. Number three, they're mostly invisible, but occasionally make themselves visible. I mean, there's angels all around. There's probably angels all around here in this room, but mostly they're kind of supposed to stay out of sight. Occasionally, God gives them permission to make themselves visible, and that's what we see in the birth narrative of Jesus. Number four, they are servants in the house of God, whereas we are children in the house of God. And this is an important distinction about their role and our role. Psalm 103, starting in verse 20, it says this: "Praise the Lord, you angels, you his angels, you mighty ones who do his bidding, who obey his word. Praise the Lord, all his heavenly hosts," which is just another name for angels. "You his servants who do his will." So that gives us a glimpse as to what angels are supposed to be doing. They're doing his bidding. They're doing his will. They're kind of sent on assignment. Hebrews 1:14 says this: "Are not all angels ministering spirits sent to serve?" Notice that. They're sent to serve. They're servants in the house of God. Sent to serve those who will inherit salvation. Well, who will inherit salvation? Well, that's you and that's me. That's the church. That's believers in Jesus. So part of their role is to kind of serve God by serving us, those of us who follow Jesus. And I don't know, raise your hand if you watch the series Downton Abbey. Anyone? Okay, so some of you aren't going to understand this at all. My homework for you is to go watch the whole series. It's really good. It's really good. I don't do British TV, but this is really good. Some of you are like, man, I'm a BritBox person. That's all I watch. No, but Downton Abbey was interesting. It's this show about this whole family. They have an estate, right? The lord of the house has quite an extensive estate, but there's also servants in the house. And what you see in the house is two things. There's a house full of servants, but there's also a house full of family. And it's sort of the servants live downstairs and the family lives upstairs, and you're kind of watching this interaction that happens. And in many ways, when you watch the servants, it's like they almost have a better idea of what's going on in the house than the actual family. And in some cases, in certain cases, some of the servants, especially like the butler, who's the head guy, he's in charge of all the other servants, some of the servants have more authority than even the children do in particular moments of their life, especially when the children are younger. And in fact, the servants were kind of taking care of the kids when they were younger and watching them grow up. and being a part of their family. But ultimately, and you kind of get this in the show, it's the children who inherit the estate. It's not the servants. Let me say that again. It's the children, that's you. It's the children who inherit the estate, not the servants. And it's the children who are made in the image of their father, not the servants. It's the children who are made in the image of their father. Again, that's you and me. And so angels serve God, and they serve his kingdom, and they're kind of servants in the house of God. That's how we should view them, right? We serve God also, and we serve his kingdom, but when we serve as co-heirs with Christ. We serve as children of God who will receive the inheritance of the kingdom. And so there's this partnership, right? There's this partnership with angels in the sense that we serve God and they serve God, but there's a distinct difference in roles. They are servants in the house of God. We are children in the house of God, which is actually an elevated position. Does that make sense? Number 5, angels are often sent on assignment from God for a specific purpose. And we see that throughout the birth narrative of Jesus. These angels who are sent with a specific assignment that God gives them. We'll talk about that more as we go. Number 6, angels are not to be worshiped. And this is where our culture gets it really wrong. Angels, again, are servants in the house of God. They're not to be worshiped. They're not eternal beings. They're created beings. They just have a different role. And in fact, the book of Revelation was written by a guy named John, and he had this incredible vision. He was taken in the spirit up to heaven, and he saw all this stuff happen in the heavenly realms. And there was actually an angel that was kind of his guide that took him through the vision. And we see an interesting interaction between John and the angel that was sort of his guide in Revelation 22. It says this: I, John, am the one who heard and saw these things. And when I had heard and seen them, I fell down to worship at the feet of the angel who had been showing them to me. But he said to me, don't do that. I'm a fellow servant with you and with your fellow prophets and with all who keep the words of this scroll. Worship God. In other words, angels are all pointing back to God, as we are pointing back to God. There should be no worship of angels, right? It's almost like a little kid who's being raised by the servants in the house, and the little kid runs up to the maid or to the butler and says, Daddy! And the butler's like, no. There's your dad, right? Go over to your dad. It's kind of the same thing. John falls on his knees to worship this angel, and the angel's like, no. I'm a fellow servant. I'm here to serve you. I'm serving God. Do not worship me. All right, number 7. There are different kinds of angels. We learn that from the Bible. There's a kind called seraphim. In Isaiah 6, the prophet sees what he calls seraphim. There's also cherubim. We see those a lot. In fact, in Exodus 25, the people of God are commanded to make these little gold cherubim pointing at each other on top of the Ark of the Covenant when they make the Ark of the Covenant. In 1 Kings 6, when they build the temple, in the most holy place, there's these gigantic cherubim that they're supposed to make out of wood, and then they cover them in gold. And in Ezekiel 10, Ezekiel actually sees cherubim. So there's different kinds of angels that have different kinds of assignment. It's not just one, sort of kind of angel. There's lots of different kinds of angels. In fact, that leads to number 8. Angels operate in a hierarchy. We learn from the Bible that not all angels are kind of on the same level. There's actually a command structure to angels. Jude, it's a book in your New Testament, if you didn't know that. Jude 1:9, it references the archangel Michael. Daniel 10:13, again, references Michael, one of the chief princes. So if angels are called princes, then archangels are called chief princes. Revelation 12:7, it says Michael and his angels, notice that. That means he's got a group of angels that he's in charge of. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. We're talking about Satan there. Interesting. So Michael has a group of angels that he's in charge of. He's kind of like a warrior angel, Michael is. He's always fighting in the Bible. So archangels seem to be in charge of other angels. They have a greater power, greater authority. And the Bible seems to indicate that Michael is an archangel. It also seems to indicate that Gabriel is an archangel. And we see Gabriel throughout these birth narratives. So it's important to remember it's not just an angel showing up. It's an archangel showing up. And we'll see that in the story today. It's also possible, by the way, this is just a side note, that Satan was an archangel before he fell. Let me show you why. Revelation 12:9. It says, the great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent called the devil or Satan, who leads the whole world astray. He was hurled to the earth, and notice that last line, and his angels with him. In other words, he was in charge of a group of angels, and when he got tossed out of heaven, by the way, do you know he didn't get tossed into hell, right? He got tossed to earth. This is where he is now, according to the Bible. I know cartoons don't show it that way. You get a red guy with a pitchfork who's in hell somewhere. That's not what the Bible says. The Bible says he's a beautiful angel of light, masquerading as an angel of light, and he's here on earth, not in hell yet. And he has a group of angels with him. That means he was an archangel, probably. Probably, our best guess. So now that we have a sense of what angels are, who they are, what their assignments are, what do we mean by special visitations? Well, all throughout Jesus' birth narrative, there are these special visitations of angels showing up at important strategic times. And I'm going to give you 5 characteristics of each of these visitations, okay? Number 1, they become visible to a person or to a group of people. In all of these encounters, it always starts with something like this. And an angel of the Lord appeared. So the angel shows up and the person can actually see them like you're watching me and I'm watching you right now. They can actually see them. Number 2, they calm initial fears by saying, do not be afraid. In almost every case, the first thing the angel has to say, because the person's freaking out, is do not be afraid. Number 3, they make a special announcement about the near future. And this is important. They announce what's about to happen. They're not announcing like what's going to happen centuries from now. When the angels show up, they have a word, and the word is about what's about to happen next. It's the near future. Number 4, they give us some information about Jesus. In every case, we learn a little bit about the Messiah and what he's going to be like. And number 5, they usually have a word of encouragement to the person that they're talking to, in order to prepare them for what's coming or to strengthen them. All right, and the first time we see this happen is with Zechariah and Elizabeth, and they are John the Baptist's parents. So let's read their story from Luke chapter 1. In verse 5, it says, in the time of Herod, king of Judea, there was a priest named Zechariah who belonged to the priestly division of Abijah. His wife Elizabeth was also a descendant of Aaron, which meant she was in the priestly family as well. Both of them were righteous in the sight of God, observing all the Lord's commands and decrees blamelessly. But they were childless because Elizabeth was not yet able to conceive, and they were both very old. All right, so this is kind of like you can feel the hopelessness of they wanted to have kids, and then they ran out of time, and they're kind of, that maybe that was one of their prayers, but they were both very old at this point. Verse 8, once when Zechariah's division was on duty, and he was serving as a priest before God, he was chosen by lot, according to the custom of the priesthood, to go into the temple of the Lord and burn incense. And when the time for the burning of incense came, all the assembled worshipers were praying outside. So they would break up into divisions, and the priests would go and they would serve in the temple, and then they would draw names as to who actually got to go in. Now, if you look at the temple, this is a picture of the temple. Some of them served outside. They were offering burnt offerings. They were, cleansing with the wash basins. And if their name was drawn, they got to go into what's called the holy place. Now, only the high priest could go into the most holy place. That's the place all the way in the back, that small room with the cherubim that I was talking about. But this middle room here was called the holy place. That's where the lampstands were, and it was plated in gold. So if you imagine all these lampstands, and they were all lit up, and the light was bouncing around. It would have been like this, you'd walk into this room that was just glowing, right? And the table there would have had bread of presence on it that they would exchange out. But there was also this little altar called the altar of incense. It was about 1.5 feet by 1.5 feet square. It was about 3 feet tall, not unlike what we're looking at right here. It was just like this. And they would go put incense on it. The incense would burn continually. It'd represent the prayers that would go up before God. So this was Zechariah's job. His name got drawn. He gets to go in. He's putting the incense in and exchanging the coals and doing all that. So he's just doing his job. In other words, this is you on a Monday morning, just doing your job. This is nothing special. There's no worship music. You know what I mean? This is not like some awesome moment for him. His name got drawn. He's going in. He's changing out the incense. And then this happens, right? Verse 11. Then an angel of the Lord appeared to him. Now that's number one, right? The appearance. Standing at the right side of the altar of incense. And so if this is our altar of incense this morning, Zechariah is here. This angel shows up right here, standing right here. And he can see him, just full on. Just boom. He shows up right there. Verse 12, when Zechariah saw him, he was startled and was gripped with fear. Well, of course he was, you know. Imagine you're driving down the road and an angel shows up in your passenger seat. You know, might be a little fearful. But the angel said to him, do not be afraid. That's number two. He had to calm his fears. Do not be afraid, Zechariah. Your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you are to call him John. Now that's number three. He's given a little information about the near future. You've been praying for a son, and now you've got one. That's great news, right? Verse 14. He will be a joy and a delight to you, and many will rejoice because of his birth. That's number five. That's that word of encouragement. This is going to be an awesome son. He's going to be a joy and a delight to you, right? Just this word of encouragement to encourage Zechariah. Verse 15, for he will be great in the sight of the Lord. He is never to take wine or other fermented drink, and he will be filled with the Holy Spirit even before he is born. Verse 16, he will bring back many of the people of Israel to the Lord their God, and he will, and notice what he says next. This isn't just him making up words. This is actually fulfillment of prophecy here. He says, and he will go on before the Lord in the spirit and power of Elijah to turn the hearts of the parents to their children and the disobedient to the wisdom of the righteous, to make ready a people prepared for the Lord. And so this is number four. This gives us a little clue about Jesus, the Messiah. It's that John the Baptist, their son, is going to go before them and really going to be this Elijah figure that was prophesied about, which he was prophesied about in Micah, in the Old Testament. The prophet Micah, in Micah 4, starting in verse 5. God says this through the prophet. He says, see, I will send the prophet Elijah to you before that great and dreadful day the Lord comes. They're talking about the day of the Lord, and they thought, man, this is it. The Messiah is going to show up. It's going to be a great day for us. It's going to be a horrible day for all the pagans, and a dreadful day for them because his judgment's going to come, but the Messiah is going to come. But before that day, God is saying, before that day, I will send the prophet Elijah to you ahead of time. This will be your clue. Verse 6, he will turn the hearts of the parents to their children and the hearts of the children to their parents. In other words, the angel is really quoting a verse from the prophet Micah. Now, this is interesting because what the angel is saying to Zechariah is not just, hey, John, you've been praying a long time for a son and this miracle is going to happen. Even though you're old and Elizabeth's old, you're going to have a miraculous baby. I mean, that's good news enough. But Zechariah knew this verse. So when the angel starts talking about him being like Elijah, going before the Lord, he knew what that meant. What the angel was saying is, your son is going to be the Elijah-like figure that goes before the Messiah. In other words, the day of the Lord is here. Your son is going to be the one that prepares the way for the Messiah. I mean, that's a lot of information. Not only am I going to have a son that I've been praying for, that I thought I was long overdue, you know, there was no way I could have a son at this age. But he's actually going to be the Elijah figure that prepares the way for the Messiah. And so Zechariah responds with joy and faith. No, that's not actually what happens. Luke 1:18, Zechariah asked the angel, how can I be sure of this? I'm an old man, and my wife is well along in years. Like how he didn't call her old, and he like knew they've been married long enough. Yeah, he's like, I'm old, and she's mature. But he can't believe it. He's like, how can I be sure of this? And it's funny because there's a gigantic angel standing right here telling him. And he's like, I just don't know. I need some more hard evidence that this is what's going to happen. How can I be sure of this, right? So for me, this moment where he's kind of full of disbelief and doubt, this moment for me really highlights an important truth that I want to kind of unpack with you a little bit. And it's the burden of knowing. So what do I mean by the burden of knowing? Well, I don't know if you're like me, but we often want God to tell us stuff ahead of time. Tell me where I'm going. Tell me what the next step is. Tell me the future, right? We want a heads up on whatever God's going to tell us, wherever he's leading us or whatever our future holds. God, can you tell me? But we have to understand that knowing things carries with it a responsibility and a burden. And we end up having to steward that burden and responsibility. Let me give you an example. In 2022, my wife and I, we were praying and we really got the sense that we were supposed to leave the church we were at in Baltimore. And so this came after much deliberation and a lot of tear-filled nights. I think there was 3 months where every night somebody was crying, you know. The dog was crying, I was crying, or Missy was crying, somebody was crying. As the Lord was calling us away from our church and calling us away from our home and calling us away from friends and family. And guys, it was incredibly painful. And here's the thing, there was this season where we knew we were going to move, but our kids didn't know. We knew we were about to ask them to leave their family, their friends, their house, their schools, their sports, everything, leave it all behind, come to Kansas City. We knew that. They didn't know that. So we're watching them live life not knowing what's coming. But we knew what was coming. Can I tell you, it's not a joy to know that stuff? It's not exciting to know the future in that case. It's a burden. You walk around every day with the burden of knowing. Does that make sense? It's a responsibility. It's a weight that you carry, especially when you know something that other people don't know. And we always assume that knowing stuff in advance is a good thing, don't we? Oh, if I just knew a little ahead of time. But knowing stuff comes with a burden that we have to steward. And sometimes God will share with us information about another person. Maybe about their future or about what God is saying about them. We call those prophetic words. And knowing these things about people or having insight into a person's life, it can be a heavy weight to carry. But even though we pray, oh God, give me those words where, you tell me something about somebody and then I go deliver a prophetic word and we think it's going to be just this amazing moment of God, you know what I mean? But too often when the Lord shares something with you about somebody else, it's a weight. It's a weight and a responsibility and a burden to carry. And God has to make a calculation, I think. When it comes to knowing stuff about people, God has to measure how much he can share with us without us losing our love for people. Let me put it this way. How much of someone else's sin can he share with you before you stop seeing that person the way God sees them? So God has to make this calculation. Yes, I want to reveal stuff to you so that you can help that person, but if I reveal too much and you lose your love for them, or what's worse is we might start judging them, then God doesn't want to put that on us, right? If it reduces our ability to love them, if we start judging them, then he's not going to tell us stuff about other people. So here's the calculation, right? The more God can trust you to love people, warts and all, the more he can trust you to not judge people, then the more he can share with you. So if you want God to speak to you, then part of it is learning to love people better so that he can trust you not to judge people when he shares stuff with you. And here's the deal, guys. There's a similar dynamic at play when it comes to the future. How much of the future can God share with us before we start freaking out and worrying with anxiety? Now, we all want to think that, oh no, God, tell me the future. I'll be just fine. Really? If God started sharing with us your future, right? If he started sharing with you your future, would you even believe him? Here's a little fun experiment we can do. What if, let's think about the year, okay? If he were to peel back the curtain, if he were to share with you what's coming, would it lead you to disbelief or doubt, or would it lead to greater faith? Reflect on all that's happened in the last year. Where were you this time last December? I was right here in that chair. Like, where were you in life last December as you were looking at the coming year, which was 2025? And now I want you to think through all that's happened this last year. Rewind. Remember January? I know you can barely remember January. Do you know in January we did a pastoral transition? January is when we did that, the commissioning service. Do you know in February we launched Cultivate Tomorrow Giving Campaign? Like, think back, that's February. And then March, April, right, Easter. You think of all the stuff that happened to you last year. Now, what if around December of the previous year, an angel showed up to you and said, all right, here's what's about to happen, and showed you 2025. Would you believe him? Would it lead to more faith? I think if we're honest with ourselves, some stuff this year we wouldn't even believe. If they told us ahead of time, we'd be like, I don't know about that one. Okay, this stuff, sure, but I don't know about that one, right? That's where Zechariah was. And sometimes God doesn't share stuff with us because he doesn't want to put that burden of knowing on us. He doesn't want it to lead to unbelief or doubt. He wants us to live by faith. And so here's a great psalm for us. Psalm 119, 105. Your word is a lamp for my feet and a light on my path. Most of the time, God in his wisdom just wants to show us the next step. He wants to light the path that's right in front of us so that we don't trip. He wants to light the path. He doesn't want to shine way down the path because for a lot of us, it'll lead to anxiety, fear, worry. It'll lead to unbelief or disbelief or fear, a lot of things, right? So he just shows us kind of what's right in front of us. He shows us the next step. He lights our path just enough so that we don't trip. Otherwise, we would respond the same way Zechariah responded, with disbelief or unbelief or doubt. And so Zechariah, in light of this information, is like, angel, I'm just not sure. How can I be sure? And then here's how the angel responds in Luke 1:19. Can you just picture the angel's face at this moment of Zechariah not believing him? Like, okay, this is where my imagination goes. The angel said to him, I am Gabriel. Like, I love that he starts with that, right? He's like, oh, you don't even know who's talking to you right now. Like, I'm not just some Joe Schmo angel. Like, I'm Gabriel, for goodness sakes. Like, I'm one of the archangels here. I am Gabriel. And to back his resume up, here it is. I stand in the presence of God. Like these other angels, they're milling around down here. Not me. I stand in the courtroom of God's presence. I am there all the time. This is who's talking to you, Zechariah. I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I have been sent to speak to you and to tell you this good news. How dare you not believe this? Are you kidding me? Verse 20, and now you will be silent and not able to speak until the day this happens, because you did not believe my words, which, by the way, I just want you to know, will come true at their appointed time. All right, my Gabriel has a little attitude, but your Gabriel can be holy. My Gabriel's got a little, he's an archangel after all, he's got a little, He just reminds Zechariah, listen, man, these will come true. Like, whether you believe it or not, these are coming true, buddy. And I love that Zechariah won't be allowed to spread his doubt and unbelief. You ever wonder why he's been made silent? I think it's like containing a virus. I think Gabriel is like, nope, we're going to shut your mouth down so that you can't spread your unbelief and disbelief and doubts. So you're just not going to be able to talk. And I think the inability to speak functions in two ways. It functions as a sign that what Gabriel is saying will come true, but it's also a safety measure so that the unbelief doesn't kind of spread like gangrene and contaminate God's plans. So he shuts it down. And I also love how planned God is. Did you notice this? John the Baptist was set apart to prepare the way for Jesus, but God even takes it a step before John the Baptist, and he goes further back. He sends Gabriel to prepare Zechariah and Elizabeth for John the Baptist. So let's put this together. God sent Gabriel to prepare Zechariah and Elizabeth for John the Baptist, knowing he'll commission John the Baptist to prepare the way for Jesus. God's like 2 steps back preparing everybody. Did you notice that? And I think this just shows you God is so far ahead of us a lot of times that if he tells us what he's doing, God, would you just tell me what you're doing? I think if he just told us what he was doing, we wouldn't even understand what he was talking about half the time because he's so far ahead of us, right? We wouldn't believe him because we can't see it yet. He's 2 steps ahead of us. And we can't really see it. So even if he were to share it, I think sometimes, oh God, would you share this with me? I feel like sometimes God's like, man, even if I shared it with you, you wouldn't have any idea what I was talking about. I'm 2 steps ahead of you. I'm preparing the way for the person preparing the way. That's how far out I am. And he's orchestrating it. So let me close with a couple questions this morning. How is God preparing the way for you? How is he going ahead of you? How is he setting the stage? Or what is he setting the stage for in your own life? He's getting you ready for something. What is it? Here's some more questions. When it comes to knowledge and foreknowledge, what can you be trusted with? Another way of putting that is, can God give you a glimpse of the future without you falling into unbelief, doubt, or fear? Can you be trusted with the future? How much of the future could God whisper in your ear before you start freaking out? Here's another one. Can God give you a glimpse of what someone else is struggling with without you falling into judgment? In other words, can you still see people the way God sees them? If he shows you some of their dirt, will you still be able to see through the dirt to the gold that's inside of them? Will you be able to see people the way God sees people if he shares with you something they're struggling with? How will you steward that knowledge? Church, when it comes to the burden of knowledge and the burden of foreknowledge, what can God trust you with? What have you shown him that you can be faithful with? And that's going to determine a lot of how much God can entrust us with, right? As we show ourselves faithful with knowledge and the burden of knowledge and stewarding that well, then he'll be able to trust us with more. And guys, my heart's desire is that we would be a people and that we would be a church that could steward